Today we're talking about Miss Universe Philippines 2022 interviews. My name is Dani Walker. If you're new to the channel, thanks for clicking this episode. I hope you'll consider subscribing and hitting the notifications bell. Today I'll be sharing my favorites for this part of the competition, but before we get into it, I do want to share my overall thoughts on this year's group of contestants. I really think that this year's group, when they competed for interview, in my personal opinion, did not really distinguish themselves enough. Normally when I watch interview, it's a lot easier for me to decipher my top picks and my favorites. I felt that there was a lot of consistency in this year's competition. I just think that a lot of the interviews this year were missing the heartwarming moments that we normally get from this competition, or the lighthearted moments that I think are also important. So keeping that in mind, the way that I have been narrowing down my favorites for this is to really focus on how they were communicating. And sometimes I'm considering the content if they actually shared a little bit more about themselves. But not a lot of the contestants this year were getting very specific with their answers, and I felt delivering answers that really allowed me to get to know them on a deeper level. If you haven't had time to watch the competition yet, you should also know that every contestant was asked the same 4 questions, and then they were given a Lazada question, which was different for every contestant. The questions were: tell us a story from your childhood that puts a smile on your face, what makes you laugh with your closest friends, or what makes you LOL. Women's health is a major part of the Miss Universe Philippines advocacy this year. How do you encourage women to take a more active role in this advocacy? What advice would you give to a young woman to help her become more socially aware and empowered? Every contestant had 30 seconds to provide their answer for these questions. I broke up the contestants into 2 different groups. The first group I'm going to talk about in no particular order are my contestants that were on the edge for me in interview. So I think that their semifinalist placement is really going to be dependent on their onstage performances. Cebu City, we got to give her some credit here because she had a lot of mic issues during her interview, and she kept it really light. She was always smiling throughout the interview. She did mention a lot how she's had to battle depression for most of her life, and I think that that was an important detail for her to share, but at the same time, she pretty much tied this main point into every single one of her answers. And at that point in the interview, I was really hoping that she would change things up, that she would add more variation instead of sticking to one talking point. And that's something that I share with a lot of contestants. It's important to have not just one talking point or one focal point in the interview, but to vary it so you can show different sides of yourself to the judges. The way that you can do that is by creating a personal brand, and that is something that I teach in the Rehearsed to Relatable course, and if you want to learn more about that, just click the description below. Laguna, first of all, looked gorgeous in her fuchsia suit. I really loved her entire look. Somebody made a comment in the interview, though, that she needed to breathe and take it easy, that she seemed a little bit nervous, and I agree, she did seem a little bit tense in this interview, but I really did like one of her answers when they asked her about what makes her laugh, and she was one of the very few contestants that had a very specific example about what makes her laugh, and for her, that was doing karaoke with her friends, and I totally agree. Karaoke is hilarious, and I'm a big fan. Iloilo City had a really strong opening for her interview. She talked about her personal story as well as how she's combined the love of art and science. Last, her Lazada question was, if you had power to use tech in helping improve the educational system here in the Philippines, how would you do it? I thought she had such a good point. She talked about merging entertainment and education through animation, and this really tied into her personal experience with art and science. If you watch the channel, you know that I love to gig, so no surprise that she's on this list. Here's the thing about this interview, though. I love how she looked. I absolutely loved the styling, but she didn't really answer the first question, and then she didn't answer the question about women's health. She wasn't really direct with it. So it sounded like she had some points that she wanted to get across in the interview, and she was determined to get those across no matter what they were asking her. And yes, that is important to have certain things that you want to be said in the interview, but it has to actually make sense and pair well with the question that judges are asking. So that's one thing. But outside of that, she is so sweet and sincere, and I really, really loved her energy throughout the entire thing. Albay did very, very well in her interview. She was very consistent throughout. I think that she had a really strong opening sharing about her background. That was my favorite answer of hers. But then it was so consistent throughout that I wish that she would have had a little bit more personality and more fun with the interview. Lucena looked so beautiful in her blue two-piece outfit. Let's start with that. When they asked her the question about how to be more socially aware, she mentioned something important and she said, don't just be informed, but take action to make a difference. And I thought that was great. Then her individual question was, if you have to sacrifice one thing to win, what would it be? And she just gave a relevant example. She says, I'm doing it now. I'm sacrificing my career because I want to inspire women to accomplish their dreams. And honestly, she has a really great voice. I think she should also do voiceover work. I believe that Lapu-Lapu City did a really great job of incorporating personal details in her interview. In her first question, when they asked her about something that makes her smile in her childhood, she did share within the answer that she became independent because of how dependent her mother was in her marriage. And oh, boy, yes, what a great answer that was. She also mentioned, though, some character qualities. She said that her friends know her to be somebody who is blunt, but she's also very real. And then she talked about how she used to be in med school and then how she had a career change. She did share a lot of really interesting information in the interview, but I am on the fence because the things that she shared aren't necessarily relevant qualities that are necessary to be a title holder. Negros Occidental, I think that she did pretty well, and what I liked about her is that she had one of the more natural deliveries in her interview. For her individual question, she was asked, if you were to start your own online business, what would it be and why? And then she shared, well, actually, I am an online seller, and I've been able to transition that into my dream, which is to have a physical store, so now I'm doing that. Mandawi has been one of my favorites throughout the competition, but I did feel that she was quite reserved in the interview and she just seemed a bit nervous, and I was like, no, I just wanted her to be more herself and be more relaxed and comfortable. But I do think she had a quality answer when they asked her, what does being a uniquely beautiful woman mean to you? She shared that she's the shortest contestant in the competition, but that if you have confidence, then those things don't matter. And I thought that it was just such a great way to wrap up her interview. Devout Del Ser is a returning contestant, and I've really been following her throughout the competition. I've seen so much growth within her, and I think that her interview had a really, really strong opening at the very beginning. It sounded great. She talked about how she was born as a preemie. She said that she was told she wasn't beautiful and that she wasn't enough, but she stands here defying that, and that got my heart from the get-go. But I felt like since that was such a strong opening that the rest of the answers didn't compare to it. They didn't have the same momentum just because that answer was my ultimate favorite. And so it's like when you have such a strong opening like that, I feel like it's really, really hard to keep that momentum going. Now I'm going to talk about my top picks for interview. These are the contestants that I think that if they do decently well for their on-stage competitions, that they'll have a spot in the semifinals. Deval del Norte. So she talked about applying love to everything that she does in life. And then she also, for the women's health question, was telling people that you should start with your own health first, and then that can empower other women. Also, she had a really good answer about becoming socially aware and more empowered. She talked about, first of all, reading the news, and then her other main point was to become more involved in your community. And then her individual question was, how do you think e-commerce can play a role in improving the equality of education in the Philippines? And she said that it can bring convenience because e-commerce is making school supplies more accessible. But overall, her delivery in this interview was very eloquent. Victoria's City, she wore white. I talked about this in a recent episode that I really liked to see her in white, so it was great to see her wearing it for the interview competition. Now, she talked about in her opening question that she wasn't raised with her biological parents, and then throughout this interview, I just felt like she was so happy, but it wasn't too much, it wasn't over the top, and she just seemed completely relaxed. And then her last question was, what is the most interesting product that you bought from Lazada, and how has it played a role in your life as a Miss Universe Philippines candidate? And she had a really relevant answer. She talked about makeup brushes and how they've been learning how to do their own hair and makeup, and that's going to be a necessary skill to be the title holder. So that was kind of the direction she was going. It just made a lot of sense, and I really just appreciated how relaxed she was. We have to talk about Bahol because she may have had the best interview in this competition, of course, dependent upon your personal opinion. But in her first question, when they asked her about childhood, she jumped right into this story about almost drowning as a kid. So that was her opening. And then she related that to how she's a free diver now. And then, oh my gosh, they asked her about a funny story with friends or something that makes you laugh, and she was so candid. She talked about at the competition how she got a little bit nervous, it affected her stomach a bit, and how she kind of walked away from the group and farted. Yeah, she said that, and she realized, oh my gosh, this smells. So she quickly was like, maybe we should all put our masks on, let's stay safe. And she said that. I was laughing so hard when she said that. I don't know how the judges were doing or keeping it together, what their opinion was on it, but honestly, I was like, you know what? She's being honest. She's being candid. You gotta have at least some kind of appreciation for that. And then later, they asked her about the women's health and how do we encourage women to promote that advocacy. And she talked about being more a part of conversations that are surrounding women's health. And then in regards to being socially aware, she told them to read more. Totally agree. Then she was asked a question regarding brands and what actions that they can take to promote environmental conservation, essentially. And she said to make biodegradable packaging. Great, very actionable response. Loved it. And as we know, she's a very talented speaker, so just great job. Iloko Sur was a surprise for me in interview. First of all, I want to say love the styling, love the green on her. She looked beautiful. And she opened up by sharing that she was raised by farmers, and she talked about how that has brought her humility. The one thing I would have changed in this overall interview is that she wouldn't have slouched towards the mic. I do know that she's one of the tallest contestants, if not the tallest, so I'm sure that that's what affected that. And then regarding the question of female health and wellness and all of that, she encourages women to ask for help when it comes to their health, and that's this action that they can take towards improving that. And then her individual question was, what's one lesson you learned while on your journey to the crown? And she said, take every day one step at a time. And overall, I just felt like she was so genuine, and I felt like I really met her. There was no facade. She did not sound pageanty. So it's like her or not, I really have to give her credit for what felt like her being truly herself. And that's something that I loved. Cebu province, such a fan. You guys already know. First of all, love her outfit. And then I liked that during one of her answers, she thanked her friends and family who are probably watching for all of their support. And then she was asked if you could pick one product from your province to sell in Lazada, what would it be and why? And I can't remember the type of product that she talked about. It is unique to her province. And so she shared that this product promotes the livelihood specifically of many women in her province, and also it encourages heritage. Overall, she sounded extremely confident in this interview, and I thought she had such a strong ending. Bulacan is a very confident contestant, so that's already going to be a draw to her. She also had a really sweet story about her moving when she was a child. She sounded really natural, and when she talked about her LOL moment and about traveling, but I will say that I think her last answer was pretty short, and she could have done a little bit more to make the best use of that time. Makati, so consistent, very, very confident. And one thing that you'll notice about her is her voice didn't shake. She made really great eye contact with everyone, and I'll tell you, that can take you a long way. And then she shared some interesting things. She talked about how she didn't or doesn't have a camp behind her. In her individual question, they asked her, what is one thing your parents have taught you that has guided you so far in your journey to the crown? And I like how she was very honest, and she says that many of you know that I grew up from a family of privilege, but my parents wanted to teach me how to save, how to work hard, and her grandmother taught her how to give back, and that she wants to be just like her. So I thought that was really, really sweet. I thought it's nice that she's not shying away from that and not trying to create any sort of sob story for herself. She's saying, look, here's who I am, here's what it is, but at the same time, I still have humility and a great work ethic, and I thought that was such an important message. Kazan Province, first of all, love the outfit. Girl, can I borrow it, please? So cute. Aside from that, she had this opening where she shared about how she was abandoned by her dad, but the rest of her family is her reason for happiness and joy in life. And I just felt like that was this nice touching moment. And she talked about how she finds joy in the simple things. Also, she made a statement that there's nothing that women cannot do, and she gave this really encouraging message about following your heart to become empowered. So I thought that that was just a very nice moment. And her individual question was, given the rise of e-commerce, how can these platforms be used for the greater good? And she says that we can use it to connect to more people. Miss Amis Oriental, she is prepared. That's the first thing I have to say. She had a really, really strong opening. She shared about her life experiences right from the get-go. I've always said this in other episodes that I feel like she has a really great way with words. She's incredibly eloquent and she almost speaks poetically. I feel like that's the best way that I could describe it. Her individual question was, if you were asked to identify what you love most about online shopping, what would it be and why? And she says we can use it to minimize our carbon impact by not traveling to shop. So overall, easily one of my favorites. Pangasinan, gorgeous. I feel like when I look at her that I stare at her the same way a baby sees a face that they like. They like look at them and they're just like gazing at them like, wow, you are so fun to look at, right? Like that's how I feel about her. Now, in the beginning of her answer, she talked about having parents who lived abroad. She shared that she has experienced bullying and that she also lost her grandmother who was clearly influential in her life. And then she also talked, and this was smart, she talked about being an advocate of education and being a volunteer. She worked that into her answers. And I was really surprised that I didn't see more of that in these interviews. I didn't really hear what these ladies care about in their communities, what their advocacies are. And I felt like Pangasinan was the one that got the closest to that. The last question was, who's your number one role model? And she said her grandmother, and she shared this message about always treasuring your loved ones, and it was very sweet. I'm sad that we didn't get to hear as much from Pasay as we would like to have. So the beginning of her interview was cut off. I don't have an accurate assessment for her, but I will say this, that we did get to hear a little bit about how she talked about inspiring other women to take care of themselves in regards to women's health. When they asked her about becoming socially aware and empowered, she said you should read about what's going on around you. And then her individual question was, as a Miss Universe Philippines candidate, how do you think this competition is able to positively impact our country as a whole? And then she tied this into the fact, I think, that queens are a symbol of hope for the country, especially during difficult times. And I think that that's so true because it's incredible to see how the Philippines rallies behind their title holders and their candidates. It's beautiful. Those were my standouts for the interview competition. Let me know what your thoughts were about this, and remember to please keep those comments kind. Thanks for supporting the channel, and if you want to watch other episodes, I would suggest checking out my gala night recap that I posted recently. If you have any requests, you can leave those in the comment section below. And also don't forget to check out the merch store to support the channel. I greatly appreciate that. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and I hope to see you at the next one.